Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Commissioner Brockington. I'm pitch hitting tonight for Commissioner Arman, who's out of town. So the first thing we want to do before we get started tonight, we want to make a statement in reference to some new developments here at the township. So I'm just going to read this so I won't have any eye contact. I'm reading this off my phone, so I apologize to you for that. So here we go. As promised, when we undertook our facilities planning process, the Board of Commissioners and the township staff continued to evaluate options and opportunities that met the goals of the community while mitigating fiscal and environmental impact. This board is also committed to being transparent with the community about all the options and opportunities under consideration. In the spirit of transparency, a few weeks ago, at our meeting of the Board of Commissioners, we announced that the township would be exploring an opportunity that presented itself to acquire the Pitcairn property, which had the potential to enable the township to meet many of its fiscal facility needs on a quicker timetable than originally proposed. This opportunity also had the potential to save taxpayer dollars in terms of initial and long-term maintenance and operating costs. Unfortunately, since our announcement, our due diligence has revealed that this opportunity is not viable at this time, and such the acquisition is no longer being pursued at this time. The township is still committed to seeing its facilities vision, realizing and will continue to evaluate potential opportunities and funding sources to ensure that it will be able to deliver excellent responsibility and facilities and service to the community long into the future. In the event that the acquisition of the Pitcairn was going to be pursued, it had been necessary to hold public meetings during the last few weeks of August. Now that the urgency of closing on the Pitcairn property is no longer a factor, our plan is to push these meetings back to later in the fall. Please stay tuned while we review the calendar to schedule the dates of the meetings for the fall. We are also encouraging residents to attend our annual budget meeting, which are open to the public, to stay informed and to participate in ongoing conversations about facilities and other capital planning efforts, service deliveries, and financial options. Our first budget meeting will be Tuesday, September 30th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. There's also going to be one on Tuesday, October 7th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., and Wednesday, October 29th, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. The budget workshop meetings will be broadcast live over Zoom, but due to the length of the meetings, they will not be recorded. All three meetings will be hosted at the Township Administration Building and are open to the public. I want to repeat that. All three meetings will be hosted at the building and they are open to the public. Presentations and discussions of the 2026 budget will occur on the following meetings of the Board of Commissioners: Wednesday, November 5th at 7:30 p.m., Wednesday, November 12th at 8:30 p.m., Wednesday, November 19th at 7:30, Wednesday, December 10th at 7:30, and Wednesday, December 17th, which will be the Board of Commissioners will be considering the adoption of the final budget. So those are the dates, and all that information is also on our township calendar, I'm sure. These formal meetings will be broadcast live via Zoom and posted on the township YouTube channel. The preliminary budget will be available for public inspection in late November. So I ask you to please stay tuned. We look forward to this continued dialogue with all of you. So that's the statement from the township, from our commissioners, from the staff in reference to the Pitcairn building. We're going to move on now to our Public Works Committee meeting, which will be chaired by Commissioner Ziegfeld.
Thank you, Mr. President. The other thing I'd like to say is, no, thank you. You're
Vice
only
President.
Mr. Vice President.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Acting
much.
President tonight. Just want to say you've got an A for reading and for transparency. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll open the Public Works agenda for August the 6th. We have a number of things to cover. Item 1, receipt of monthly reports and citizen committee meeting minutes. 1A is a July 2025 Highway Department report. And I'll just do what I always do, which is a little narrative. Kyle and your team, as well as Bo. I mean, significant achievements. The Conklin Pool blocked inlet that you discovered and opened up. The Brookdale flood protection cleanup area, and obviously fallen trees throughout the entire township with the rough month that we had. So just a congratulations and acknowledgement of the work that you've done. Are there any other commissioners that want to comment on the Highway Department report? Commissioner Rappaport.
Thanks. Particularly, Mr. Dermer, thank you. I think I read in your report that some of the speed cushions on Barker are underway, and that's appreciated, as well as some of the other meetings and other kind of emergency stuff that you took care of. So thanks.
Anybody else? All right, so I'll move that the July 2025 Highway Department report minutes are accepted. All those in favor say aye.
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 Item B, June 2025 Refuse and Recycling Department report. No narrative here. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments? I see none. I'll close that and ask for the approval of the June 2025 Refuse and Recycling Department report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item C, July 2025 Parks Maintenance Department report, and just an acknowledgement to Bob Dominic. Extensive maintenance basically throughout the entire township, the parks and all the public buildings. Again, with the conditions that we had throughout, everything really was done in exceptional quality. So thank you, and thank your teams for that. Bo, you lead, and Bob's department, but a lot of work got done during a tough time. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? I see none, so I'll move for acceptance of the July 2025 Parks Maintenance Department report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item D, July 2025 Street and Traffic Light Superintendent report. Joe Stucker was barely able to fill 5 pages. However, it's rumored that there's a new movie based on Joe's monthly activities. I'll simply say that it comes at the beginning with the word super. So does anybody have any questions or comments for the Street and Traffic Light Superintendent report? I see none. I'll move for acceptance of the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item E, the July 2025 Fleet Superintendent report. Any questions or comments from members of the board? I see none. I'll move for approval of the Fleet Superintendent report. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item F, July 2025 Stormwater Coordinator report. And I do want to tease out Samantha Brinker. Over the last 90 days, you've submitted 7 grants, approximately value in excess of $3.4 million. So while you do the day in, day out stuff, you're still paying attention to the opportunities and the needs that the township has. And I just wanted to acknowledge that's significant activity, and hopefully we're going to be in line to receive a good percentage of those. Well done. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? Okay, I'll move for acceptance of the July 2025 Stormwater Coordinator report. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Items G and H, the Shade Tree Advisory Commission, which had a July 10th meeting. There's an attachment. And item H, the Environmental Advisory Council met July 21st, also an attachment. I'd just like to acknowledge that they continue to actively contribute to improve the township oversight and update some of our outdated ordinances, as well as help us with some of the neglected policies. So an acknowledgement to both of those citizens committees. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? I see none. I'll move for acceptance of both the Shade Tree Advisory Commission and the Environmental Advisory Council minutes for the month of July. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We get item 2, old business. Item A, excuse me, update from Fred Gerloff of Aqua PA on the status of sewer capacity in Cheltenham Township. And Mr. Gerloff, before you talk about capacity, I'd like to just frame a couple of things that this board and our staff are also interested in. You may be aware that there are multiple developments pending throughout the township: Kerlin Farms, Ashland, Melrose Country Club, not to mention additional volume and process that's going to be coming from Abington and Jenkintown Townships. So we still have the following concerns. Is there a sufficient capacity to be able to manage, all that effluence? And obviously, that's something that you, along with the staff and the Philadelphia Water Department, which does the processing, we need to at least, if not tonight, fairly quickly have answers to that. That processing capacity is obviously going to be challenged with the amount of volume that's going to increase from those things. So we also need your assistance in helping us to understand the role that Aqua has in improving the township's ability to self-determine and manage both our EDUs and our sewer health as we consider all these developments. So I know you probably have a presentation prepared by at least Fred. I wanted to add those things that I know we continually bring to the table. So if you have a presentation, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Let me just take a moment here and share my screen. Let me get this situated. Okay. Oh, 1 second here. What's going on? Yeah, so for those, well, wait a second, just to make sure everybody can see my screen here. Everybody see this?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, my name's Fred Gerloff. I'm with Aqua in the planning and engineering department. I've been working on the Cheltenham system since it was acquired. So, I want to respect everyone's time tonight, try my best to give an update and overview of some of the hot topics and things that we've been working on and try to do so in an abbreviated agenda. So one of the couple things I want to touch on tonight, the background, the connection management plan, specifically the enclave at Melrose Development, some of our collection system work and assessments that we've been doing, and then some of our work that we've been proposing for the Interceptor A improvements. So to start out, I guess just for the benefit of everyone on the call, we acquired the system in December of 2019. I was there for that, and in January of 2020, we started work on a very detailed hydraulic analysis of the collection system, really to kind of figure out what the major and key causes were of the hydraulic overload, which has, created a lot of issues and growth problems in the town for years. So in that, we built a very robust hydraulic model. A lot of the stuff that we had, some of the information we had gotten from the township and the modeling had to be reworked and reconstructed and brought up to most recent data sets that we were working with. So we completed that initial evaluation in June of 2022. And not surprisingly, I should say, but we realized that the storm flows we had from our stakeholders, namely PWD, had a very significant impact on the lower portion of Interceptor A and our ability to manage and convey flows in that area, which is, again, one of the main root causes of the overloads and why we have the connection management plan and the corrective action plan. So, again, with this knowledge and our tool, the model, and the analysis, and with some options in front of us, we reached out and started communications immediately with PWD and DEP towards, a regional solution that would not only, solve the hydraulic problem in Cheltenham, but also talk with PWD, who's a major contributor to that problem. So another of the key things that we understood and studied was that just replacing and repairing pipe in the collection system alone was not going to be enough, to bring flows down, to reduce the overload. And so since that time, our kind of objectives here are both short and long term. Short term being, let's fix some of the pipes and problems that we find and and free up capacity for near and short-term projects. And let's also work on a long-term solution, which I'll get into later, that would alleviate the hydraulic overload. And in turn, that would enable, the release for additional sewer connections. This was a slide, or portions of this is which I was here before and talked to you guys a little bit about the connection management plan. I would assume most are relatively well versed on how it works, but the key aspects here are that Aqua's responsible for providing and the capacity certifications for new connections, and the township is responsible for making the assignments of that capacity to your respective projects that you want to see move forward. The big thing that we identified early on with our discussions with the township and specifically DEP was looking at the terms, the developments and the needs within 12 to 18 month planning timeframes, so that we were able to plan and prepare and make and have the opportunity to work on making capacity available. So, really communication between the township and finding out what projects are coming down the pike and when, and within what timeframes, so we can make capacity available for those projects. So lastly, I guess I should say, DEP awards Aqua and the township EDUs for our efforts in corrective action, which we can talk about in a little bit. But so far, we've been successful in making capacity available for all the projects that Cheltenham has put forth in the last several years due to Aqua's work in the collection system and making repairs. I previously reported on an EDU release from 2022. There's 87 of those that have yet to be used, specifically Kerlin Farms and 222 Church Road. That release was a total of 169 EDUs, which were all used up at I would say the middle to the end of maybe June of 2024. We allocated some of those EDUs for other projects that came in. But again, those two key projects are hanging out there. They've, are not much progress on those, but we do have capacity for them. The latest on the CMP. So we sat down with the township staff in probably a little bit before September of last year, took a look at what projects were more or less shovel ready, or those that were coming down the pike within the 12 to 18 month time frame, and put a list together and revised and submitted to the DEP a list for a request for additional EDUs, which was subsequently approved on April 3rd. That was a release of 155 EDUs roughly for the projects that you see in this table. Ashland Development, Melrose Court, there were a couple 25 or so EDUs for small projects, and then 45 EDUs that we keep in reserve for small change in use projects, as well as, other folks that want to connect that may be on septic system or so forth. So again, we've secured 313 EDUs within the last several years for projects that we've known about. And again, just letting you know that it's paramount to have the township's advance notification of what projects are coming, so we can ensure that when these requests go in, they are sufficient, and we are projecting what projects we know are out there, and so we can make capacity for them when they're ready to move forward. So the Enclave is, as you all know, a mixed-use community. It's going to require 592 EDUs, which is quite a bit. One of the largest projects, or the largest project we've seen in our tenure as owners of the collection system. So as of right now, this project we were not aware of, and therefore it was not allocated on the latest version of the connection management plan that was DEP approved in April. So we are right now at a point where we need basically an interim connection management plan revision, which is subject to DEP's approval for these additional EDUs. I won't get into a lot of the details, but the developer is proposing a centralized pump station which will discharge into our Interceptor A, which I referred to earlier, the major pipeline that sends our flow down to the city of Philadelphia. Dry weather, we don't have a problem with the capacity. However, as we all know, it's the storms and the wet weather that are the issue. So what is being proposed right now is a temporary sewage holding tank in order to store flow during wet weather events, in order to hold the flow back so that we can say that, listen, by connecting these additional EDUs, we're not exacerbating any problems within Interceptor A, or creating any SSOs by this, new significant volume coming into the pipeline, which is hydraulically overloaded again during wet weather period. So we're okay with this. Aqua is on board with this concept. Our goal here is not to slow up the development. And mainly this temporary tank would enable the project to proceed prior to our execution of a larger Interceptor project, which I'll get into later. So that's, again, we're going to work with, we have a meeting with DEP coming up next week. Aqua and the township and the developer have all been communicating well to date about these improvements. And, we're eager to try to get this development through. Again, it's subject to approval of this concept approval by DEP and, of course, a significant CMP revision.
Fred, before you continue on that,
Sure.
I think you ought to talk a little bit or be prepared to talk about the number of sewage holding tanks, where they're going to be located, the capacity of those tanks. Are they going to be above or below ground? And then a lot of the technical and engineering challenges, because many of us have had exposure to sewage holding tanks in the past. And frankly, there's a concern about how well they are both approvable and structured and managed. So I think it doesn't have to be in this meeting, but I
Sure.
think there's got to be a significant amount of discussion about the use of sewage holding tanks and all the details associated with it. So thank you for that. But I think that's
Sure.
also going to be on the township to bring some of those issues up, as well as knowing the state of the art in sewage holding tanks is not necessarily a long-term solution. As you've already acknowledged, it's a temporary situation. So there's some concerns on a number of levels by those of us that have had exposure to this before.
Sure. Yeah, we'd be happy to engage your team and talk through whatever issues those are as it relates to the tank and so forth. So moving into some of our collection system work, we've most recently, as you can imagine, I think we've got roughly 100 miles of pipe in town, and there's a significant amount of information we have on these pipes. We've more recently have really recent data, like 75% worth of the system we have televised, but we've began to about a year or two ago, we started making an asset management program, which is really kind of a nice tool in order to inventory all the pipes with all the recent inspections, and enables us to manage and prioritize which segments of pipe need rehabilitation first, to ensure that the money that we're spending on fixing things go to the worst areas first. So, some of the stuff we've spent money on to date has been, roughly $7 million on some collection system work, whether it's pipe replacements, lining, the work on Interceptor A and Interceptor B. The picture here on the right is actually one of the crews putting in an 18-inch liner in our Interceptor B line, which was sometime last year. This year, we've got a real significant effort going on to categorize and get more information on other missing pieces of pipe data that we need in order to prioritize future improvements. We're doing 400,000 feet of pipe, 200 manhole inspections, and we've already identified 8 pretty critical repairs. I mean, there's a lot more, but there's 8 critical repairs that we're going to be prioritizing here this year and early next year in order to get those things fixed. So
and just the point of information.
Yeah.
Before we sold the system off, the township invested over $11 million to replace Interceptor A.
Yeah.
So the investment was done by the township as well. So there's significant amounts of dollars that were allocated to try and protect us in that realm. Thank you.
Yeah. So we've got a larger chunk of capital money that is planned to be spent on this Interceptor A project, which I'll kind of get into briefly, but which is very significant. So this is just kind of a screenshot of some of that asset management information that we capture. It shows us where we have and don't have information. This is taken some time ago, but it allows us to prioritize areas and networks of pipe that we need to, again, prioritize. So getting into Interceptor A, I'm going to try to keep things moving here, but the lower portion of Interceptor A, highlighted with this pink bubble here, shows the lower portion, okay? And that's where there's 9 places where PWD enters into our system. So that pipe is carrying flow from Cheltenham, Abington, Jenkintown, and the city of Philadelphia. It's flowing through down along the Tookenny Creek, and it enters into PWD's system at MC2. So this is the section. This is the worst section there is. Not only is it undersized, but it's during wet weather. We see surcharging and occasionally SSOs, and really that's the limiting component here of the system, and really why we have these hydraulic overloads that you all have known about for many years. And so in order to, one of the shortlisted plans of attack for our upgrade would be not only to upsize that portion, but install a large sewage holding tank, without getting into the details, primarily because PWD's system is limited. It would be great if we could just say, hey, let's build a big pipe and send them all the flow we can. But PWD's system is limited, and the flows that we're seeing coming into this pipe are exceeding the carrying capacity. So there has to be a point at which we offload and store some of this flow during wet weather in order to be able to manage it and keep it in the pipe. So, recently we did meet with the township representatives, Allison and Henry, back in March, kind of to discuss some of the details surrounding our plan. And again, we've got what I don't want to dismiss here is we have multiple different stakeholders, all the people that have flow coming through this pipe. It's PWD, it's Abington, it's Jenkintown, it's Cheltenham's flow. So, there's a lot of folks involved and a lot of folks that would be sharing in the cost for this project, which right now is between the pipe and the tank estimated between $50 and $80 million. And that's dependent upon, again, the range there is given based on the size and final sizing and depending upon what final design criteria we have to yet refine. So what I will say is right now, we've worked with Roger Phillips. His team put together some of the information that we requested from the township to give us what future flows for the long term, as in addition to requesting the same information about a number of future EDUs from PWD, Abington, and Jenkintown, so that when we design this, it's built for the ultimate build out flows of those respective communities, looking far into the future. So right now we have,
I did want to ask a question here. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'll hopefully selectively interrupt you.
Yeah.
But what you stated, or maybe what you haven't stated, I'm not hearing any capacity expansion by PWD to increase their ability to process that amount of effluence that's coming in from the multiple sources. Is that a question that's been addressed, and are there challenges and things that we need to do to be able to influence what could be another, basically another breaking point if they're not able to take on the additional volumes that obviously we're anticipating and you're anticipating coming from both the municipalities as well as the developments that are pending here. And I assume there's going to be additional developments in Abington and Jenkintown. So
yeah,
I want to understand where that is.
Yeah. So to understand, to really answer that question, we don't have that information at this moment because we sent requests out. That will be considered. I can't answer it unequivocally right now, but we've sent requests out, from all the communities to see what that future build out flow looks like. and to see how we're operating within our existing limit down to the city. So again, that's something that's part of this. The future flows are being accommodated, and what we're trying to build here would be something for the future. So again, we're having those discussions, and we have with the city regarding, you know, available capacity. The short answer is no, that they don't have it, but I'm not going to say, it's not to say that we can't accommodate future flow given with the tank and the pipe that we're working here. So, but until we
Fred,
get
if I can
Yeah, go
interject
ahead.
here just a second.
Yep.
Mitch, to answer your question about the city, I am aware that the city is actually doing their own redo of their 537 plan citywide that is going along parallel with the efforts that Aqua's doing. And the city would then be responsible for upgrading their pipe within their boundaries, but they're also constrained by the same 537 process they have to go through to get the DEP approval. And I know that process is being undertaken right now and has been for approximately a year.
Hey, Roger, is part of that they're going to, or they recognize that there may be a breaking point where they have to expand or add processing capacity at that particular area?
That's all part of what that plan discovers, fleshes out, and then results in that outcome. Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So really that's really what I had to say about, you know, just giving a large, you know, big overview of what's being planned here. As you said, Mitch, we can talk about specifics about Melrose or questions you have about that tank or what have you, you know, perhaps offline. I want to be respectful of everybody's time here, and I realize you probably have other agenda items. I just wanted to try to cover as much as I could.
Thanks, Fred, and I appreciate that you let me intervene a little bit because
Yeah,
this
no
is
problem.
something that's really important to us. Commissioner Rappaport, I see your hand raised, so please.
Right, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Goloff, for being here. I know I had raised when I saw on the Enclave's materials, I had asked for a presentation about the proposed tank. So I'm really glad you were able to come and share those slides with us. I think I am still very disturbed that back, I would say 10 years ago, I went with our then engineers and a number of administrators and colleagues, you know, other commissioners, to a section of pipe that I think was part of the interceptor that you showed us on your slide. And it was Philadelphia's effluent coming through Cheltenham. And yet we were responsible for the problem. And we were punished essentially by DEP for our overflows that, as you acknowledged in your first slide, were primarily coming from Philadelphia's system. And it disturbs me tremendously that we are still under this management the connection plan, and essentially being, the EDUs are being withheld and rationed to us for a problem that we really aren't responsible for. If you recall, we spent millions of dollars doing all sorts of influx, infill or whatever, the I&I research and trying to mitigate for years before you acquired the system. And it bothers me that Philadelphia really hasn't been held accountable for what essentially in that segment, certainly in that segment, is really their responsibility. So I don't know. We can't solve it tonight, but I think that really needs further discussion with DEP and with our staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Rappaport. Any other commissioners or if staff wants to weigh in? I'm looking. I can't see everybody. Allison, is anybody else's hand raised at this point?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, Fred, thank you for that. I think you're, there's an honest candor about what is and isn't, immediately doable. And I think we have to have some pretty intense discussions over the next, 4 to 6 months to make sure that that the issue of capacity at the Philadelphia end is there. Oh, Commissioner Norris, I just saw your finger go up.
Yeah, thank you. And Ed had raised his hand also. Both of
Okay.
us a little late, but not too late.
Okay.
Thank you. Just a question on the cost. I think it showed something like $60 million planned. I want to be clear, or hope that I'm clear, that that's the cost that Aqua is planning on spending on our system in the upcoming years. That's not a cost that's going to be on the shoulders of Cheltenham or for that matter, Abington or Jenkintown.
No, so that's a total project. That's a total project estimate. So again, I was just mentioning shareholders. We have Cheltenham, i.e. Aqua. We have Abington. We have Jenkintown and PWD. We all share a cost in. We all have a portional cost of that, meaning in order to split the project up.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Why would Cheltenham? What portion of that would be Cheltenham, and why would Cheltenham be?
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying Aqua. Okay, so it's Aqua. Part of that would be our capital program, right? Part of that, and then part of it would be PWD. Part of it would be Abington. Part of it would be Jenkintown. There's already intermunicipal agreements between Aqua and those other subsidiaries that's flow proportionate, meaning, if the pipe costs X to replace, then you get a share, you get a share, you get a share. So that represents the total project cost.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Diazio, obviously we need some legal guidance here.
Well, less legal, but since no one has mentioned it, I think it's just worth noting. Clearly, the township appreciates, right, the release of EDUs that have been secured since the sale of the system, but it's just not enough quick enough. And we can look at a 12 or 18 or 24-month plan of development that we anticipate in the township, but those projections don't account for the development that doesn't even come to our attention because of the moratorium that's in effect, right? And because of the lack of sewer connectivity. So developers and attorneys who represent developers, everyone knows that when you're developing in Cheltenham, you have this structural issue of lack of an ability to connect for sewer capacity. And so there are so many development projects, good development projects that this board wants to see come to fruition that aren't even coming to the board's attention because folks aren't pursuing them because they know the challenges with capacity. And so while we can continue to take the projects that we know about, I just think it has to be reiterated that we have to keep doing more faster because this inability to connect to sewer is having a crippling effect on development and redevelopment in the township. And what it ultimately means is that taxpayers pay more because the tax base is struggling, and the tax base is struggling in part because Cheltenham can't pursue development and redevelopment. And so it's not really a question. It's just a statement that I wanted to make and something that I've seen as the township's council. And if anybody else wants to piggyback off of that, that's fine, but it needed to be said tonight.
Yeah, I think that needs to be asked as a
I'll
question
get you, Ann. I'll get
Mr.
you. Hold on.
Gerloff.
Yeah, hold on for a second. Ann, would you like to jump in here?
Yeah,
And then I'll bring in Henry.
was my point in raising the issue of the punitive action of the scarcity, the withholding of the EDUs for something that was originally Philadelphia's responsibility, not ours. And that's why I say I really appreciate a joint effort. Go to DEP with, as you found, Mr. Gerloff, in your research and in your slide is reflected in that first slide, where it is a Philadelphia capacity issue and their effluent going through Cheltenham that they were not taking responsibility for. So thanks, and thanks, Mr. Diazio, making it a little more clear.
Thank you, Commissioner Rappaport. Obviously, thank you, Council. Henry Sikawango, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also wanted to just reiterate for purposes of the board, just the importance to, we may have council representing developers, but the importance of utilizing those EDUs assigned to you as a developer, because if you don't utilize them or if you don't use them, they're held, they basically, other developments that may be coming in end up not being able to access those EDUs because they've been held up by this development or another development that may not proceed or may not be shovel ready. So just wanted to highlight that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sikawango. Fred, I don't know if you want to add anything to this, but I think you can gather from the various disciplines that are weighing in. There's a tremendous amount of concern, and we appreciate the collaborative approach that you're taking. We appreciate hearing some of the activities and some of the things that you're doing on our behalf. It's really important for us to understand how those things are going to be implemented and what the implications are on us, both from a processing standpoint as well as from a future economic development and fiscal health standpoint. So hopefully we'll be getting back together in fairly short order, whether it's in a public meeting or in a session to try and get a handle on some of the things that are facing us. So thank you very much for that. And if you would, make sure that you share that presentation.
Commissioner Zieglerfeld, this is Commissioner Brock.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just checking the chat, and I do want to get some of the questions out that residents have. I know it's not, time for them to talk, but I think there's a couple questions that I'm going to read. Hopefully, Fred, if you can. One says, can the commissioners ask how much the construction of the extra sewage storage tank is going to cost and the impact on the sewage rates? Would you be able to answer that now, Fred?
Yeah, so I mean, the estimates that I provided were preliminary in nature as we further refine, kind of the sizing of the infrastructure again, and the cost sharing percentages that we're working with. I don't really have any information on rates or future rates as it relates to that question, so I don't.
All right, thank you. And I'll read the last one. Is basically, is there any consideration for requiring Philadelphia, Abington, and Jenkintown to have holding tanks to slow down their flow during the peak event and holding the resistance out? And well, that's the major part of that question. So Emily, I'm just going to go with that one. Is there any way that we can get Philly and Abington and Jenkintown to do a holding tank? Is that any plans for that?
Yeah. So the idea here is that the interceptor, while it's owned by Aqua, right? There is an agreement that those Abington and Jenkintown are parties to that piece of infrastructure and the costs surrounding its improvement. So really what we want to do and what the plan here is to have a regional solution to manage flow in that exact area where the problems are. Putting a tank in another community or trying to get another community to do something is really out of our control. We're doing stuff that we can control and has a direct impact on the areas that are problematic.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Brockington.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Norris, I see those fingers up.
Yeah, sorry, but following up on Mr. Diazio's statement, can that be phrased as a question to you, Fred? Is there any estimated date or time frame for when Cheltenham will no longer be dealing with these constraints?
Yeah. So, I mean, my first comment to that is, if you don't have the information, you can't plan for it, right? So, if we don't know about a development and it drops on our lap on a Monday morning, it's something that we don't have an opportunity to plan for. And specifically large developments, 600 EDUs. And so that would just, so having that line of communication open with the township is important in order to being able to plan for especially large developments. Secondly, I mean, yeah, so for the interim, we have been successful in securing EDUs for all the projects that we knew about and have planned for. Since we've owned the system, we've worked through several of these developments. We've gotten EDUs for them, as Henry pointed out. Most of the folks used them. Some people didn't. And we're working to identify what other projects are coming down the pike so we can plan for them. But as far as the long-term solution, really the upgrades to the interceptor, which improves the conveyance capacity, and the tank itself, which factors in all of the future flows from your community and others, are really the vehicle at which the hydraulic overloads and the SSOs go away. Therefore, you don't have overloads. DP's not going to be having an issue with you. And as we continue to replace pipe, the design criteria for that tank and pipe gets better. So we install the larger pipe, we install the tank, and it's designed for the future flows. And some of the future is a little bit unknown, but as we continue to fix broken pipe and do other things, that tank has a greater capacity to hold other larger storms without getting into the details of the design. But really, that's the future of this whole thing. So as I've said before, we're taking a long and short-term approaches to ours to be able to enable new folks to connect and these developments that you guys want to see move forward, do so. And we're committed to doing that. And I think we've proven that in just these several years here, and the release of EDUs for the town, which I think prior to our ownership was few and far between. So.
Okay.
You would be correct on that one, Fred. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? So Fred, thank you. Please get us a copy of that. And let's that open dialogue has to be pretty regular and frequent, given the fact that we are in a aggressive growth mode. There are a lot of developments. You mentioned earlier on that the enclave at Kerlin Farms was on the 79 EDU thing. Well, they're coming before us in about 5 minutes to discuss that next phase. So that's 79 that you've held back that now will need to be committed to for that development. So, and there's more coming up. So again, we'll be in touch regularly to make sure that there's no surprises.
Yeah, that capacity's been available for 3 years now. So
we know. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Fred. Appreciate it. Is there any other old business from members of the board or staff? I see none, so I'll close old business and we'll move to item 3, new business. 3A, consider recommending the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution granting conditional approval and associated waivers for a final land development application, CTDA number 25-07, for the aforementioned Kerlin Farms, 1050 Ashbourne Road, for the proposed construction of 79 age-restricted dwelling units in 3 four-story buildings with 153 parking spaces and associated site improvements. There's an attachment. Before we get going, is there anybody from staff that wants to discuss this, or from board before we, enable the developer or their counsel to come in? All right, so let me give a little Irv, do you want to jump in first? Go ahead. You're muted.
Yeah, I wanted. Is Henry still on?
Yes.
Henry. I know you had some stuff for me, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to get over there to pick it up. But you and I had a conversation about this particular location, and it was something you talked about that was missing from this. Some changes that they needed to make in the street and in the corner there. Are you willing at this point to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I can have our traffic engineer talk about it, but again, it's kind of part and parcel of this development came through to the township back in 2012, and one of the concepts as part of the development was that they would be doing improvements at the intersection of Oak Lane Road and Ashbourne Road. However, shortly after that, the process started, we also had a developer across the street, Ashbourne Meadows, come through the process. They ended up moving a little bit quicker than this development and did about 75% of those improvements. And, there's still certain improvements that have been highlighted in the traffic engineer's letter that need to be wrapped up on. And I know the developer is kind of, I'm not sure what their stance is on this issue, but I haven't, or we haven't received confirmation that they will be doing those improvements. Again, Chad Dixon can talk about those specific improvements that I'm referring to.
And Henry and Irv, to that point, the developer is on and council is on the call. I do believe that they'll be prepared to speak to that issue this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's important, I think, for context, where we're at now with the 3 buildings, the 79 units, to know that in 2012, the original proposal for the Kerlin Farms property was called for 60 townhouses in a 7-acre parcel. They then reduced it down from 60 to 50, but it still created a great deal of pushback from the community and over that density. And they finally submitted what is now the approved or in process of being approved, the 3-building, 4-story, 79 age-restricted units. Although one of the challenges that the township has was we were withdrawing our former age-restricted ordinance. So I think it's important to know where it started and where it's evolved in a lot of ways is very favorable to the community and to the neighborhood, given the original intensity and what was originally proposed. So I think it's just context for the fact that this has gone on for a dozen years, but we've arrived at a place where we're about to review the resolution. So I'll ask the developer or their counsel if they want to make some comments, please feel free to.
Good evening, Commissioner Zygmunfeld. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Friedman. Nice to hear of you and see you, of course, again.
Okay. So I appreciate some of the history that you provided. This project has been around for a long time, since 2012. There's been some litigation, been a lot of litigation. There was preliminary approval in 2018. And here we are, 2025, with a plan that reflects comments. I think it's an improved plan. And as Commissioner Zygmunfeld said, the project encompasses a much sort of smaller ground area than was originally contemplated. So those are good things. I have on the line with me Bob Blue. He's the township engineer. I'm sorry, he's the engineer.
Don't tell Roger that.
Yeah. He's the project engineer. He can briefly describe the plan, and we're asking for 2 waivers, and he'll describe those as well. And there's 1 or 2 items amongst all of the review letters that will complies, but he'll have an explanation for those. So, Bob, are you here?
Yes, and I'm not the township engineer.
Yeah, sorry.
Roger, did you hear that, please?
I heard that, Bob.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for having us here tonight. I know it's a busy time for everybody.
Sure. Thank you.
Just a quick little background. We were engaged to finish this subdivision probably about a year or so ago. We've been keeping Fred informed and Roger as far as we are going along. I think we've got the plan to a point, other than a couple of waivers, where we are in a will comply situation, both with Roger's letter and the letter by the traffic engineer. And if you would like me to quickly go over that, I think everybody knows the history, unless you want me to give you a little bit.
No, just give us the issues that, potentially could be outstanding that you're going will comply, and then Peter referenced some that might need explanation.
Right, okay. So we have a letter from Roger Phillips, the existing township engineer, and part of it, and we also have the traffic review, which is about very short. One of the things that we want to talk about on the traffic review is that the curb ramps outside on the PennDOT roads have been reviewed and approved by PennDOT. We have an existing permit that's still in effect at this point, and the ramps as shown on there have been approved by PennDOT. So we can discuss later with the township traffic engineer, the reason for us not complying with that. The second situation is there's been a request for a new mast arm at the southeast corner, the site corner of the intersection. And that's a substantial cost item, and it's not part of the PennDOT approval permit that we have. So we'd like to discuss that on as you know, Mitch, I've been involved in 222 Church Road and Ashland and others. So, we've established a relationship with the township, and I don't know whether the township has any traffic impact fees. Is that something your traffic engineer could?
They do not, Bob.
I'm sorry, they do not?
They do not.
Okay, thank you. So,
is Anton there, or is anybody from Bowman online, out of curiosity?
Yeah, this is Chad Dixon from Bowman. I'm filling in for Anton tonight. He's on vacation.
How dare he?
I thought exactly.
So I don't know whether you want to comment on that or just know that that's an item that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, I can give a quick overview of the comment in our review letter that's been referenced in regards to the recommendations we made for some traffic related to the traffic signal and the crosswalks at the intersection. When the project was originally proposed and the traffic improvements that were included with the PennDOT HOP application, it included some traffic signal upgrades that were going to be required of this project. Due to the timing that was referenced previously, those traffic signal items were actually completed by the developer across the road. So we took a look at, what could be done in its place, if there was any remaining items at the intersection that could be done by this applicant, since those original improvements had been completed by others. So we came up with 3 recommendations. One was to install continental crosswalks on all the approaches of the intersection. These would be more highly visible crosswalks, pavement markings than just the single parallel lines that you see out at the intersection today. The second was to install what's called accessible pedestrian signals, and these are the push buttons that are used to activate the pedestrian signals. They're referred to as APS signals, are for visually impaired pedestrians. They're becoming sort of the new standard in pedestrian push buttons to make them more ADA compliant, in particular for visually impaired pedestrians. And then the third item was to install new signal mast arm pole on the applicant's corner of the intersection. The mast arm that's there now is a little dated at this point and sits in the middle of the sidewalk at the intersection. And we recommended, as a potential improvement, to replace that mast arm and locate the pole behind the sidewalk, which is the current design standard that's used today, to get it out of the sidewalk and to eliminate that obstruction for pedestrians when they're at the intersection.
Henry, Roger, were those recommendations acceptable given the questions that were still outstanding from your vantage point? Or is that still subject to some additional discussion?
Yeah, again, we haven't received positive feedback from the property owner that they're going to do these improvements. Joe Stackett, I hate to put you on the spot, but Joe deals with these traffic issues all the time, and it's something that he probably strongly recommends as well. But I won't put words in his mouth.
Yes,
Mr.
good evening.
Stucker?
Good evening. Yeah, so this was discussed. This project had PennDOT approvals prior to my start at the township over 8 years ago. And those, I believe, are what they're referring to as the current HOP. It's just been carried over. But as part of that, there was initially Kerlin Farms had looked to, at that point, like 7, 8 years ago, to potentially start the project. And when I did some research, spoke with PennDOT, had they started, they would have been responsible for all of the traffic signal improvements that were required at the time. And then it kind of fell, to the wayside. They didn't do any, proceed with any work. And so I went to the developer for Ashbourne Meadows, and, we've had a ongoing, trying to improve signals throughout the township, especially walkability, pedestrian safety. Those are big things, with the commissioners, with the residents, and even with PennDOT. So, the developer of Ashbourne Meadows, we required of them to make additional improvements that weren't initially on their plan either. And their plan was about 8 or 10 years old, in order to bring it up to more current standards. And, they did put significant amounts of additional money into traffic safety at 2 intersections that border their property with traffic signals. And therefore, now we're at the point that Kerlin Farms is ready to move forward. And that's why these issues came up again, especially the pedestrian buttons. They are standard throughout the township for any improvements, and the continental crosswalks as well for safety, right? This is going to be an age restricted development. I'm sure there will be a lot of folks that want to walk in the area, and in order to improve the safety for those residents, as well as the folks that may use the walking trail right there across the street, and that are making their way to the school past that property, that's a significant improvement for walkability and for safety, right? So, yes, that's probably the lesser of the costs, but also the traffic signal being located where it's at does make it difficult for some of the larger vehicles to make the turns there. It makes it very tight. And as we said, that was, one of the only the mast arms that was not replaced or any significant work done by Ashbourne Meadows. But Ashbourne Meadows did have to add additional, add the mast arms on the other side, as well as update all the, and go to radar rather than loops. Again, bringing it up to the current standards of the township. So that's why when discussing this with Bowman on what improvements, still needed to be made to that intersection, those were the ones that were outstanding with me. And from the township's point of view, on the safety aspects for that intersection.
Thank you, Mr. Stuckert. I think you've made a fine, established the case why those are needed. Commissioner Rappaport, I see your hand raised. And I see Commissioner Churko. So go ahead, Ann, you first.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate what the township has been saying about this. To me, it's a no-brainer. We just don't go further with accepting any of the waivers or the final land development. Can't go forward until this is an established agreement. You all also have, in addition to the pedestrian safety, you have 153 parking spaces, and that implies you're going to have quite a bit of new traffic involved. We need a corresponding acknowledgement through these acts for public vehicular as well as pedestrian safety. So that's on that. That's a no-brainer.
And on that point, before we go further, this issue I actually believe is resolved. If Peter, if you're on the line, he and I spoke this afternoon, and I believe that they were planning to address this, but I believe this issue is resolved. Peter, can you speak to that?
Ed, I believe the issue is resolved, and I think the fact that there's no traffic improvement fees helps push us over the goal line. So let's consider this as resolved. So the developer will do the 3 items that were discussed a few minutes ago. And I'm going to turn it back to Bob Blue to finish his presentation.
Well, before you do,
let Commissioner Rappaport finish. I just didn't want to go too far down that road, knowing that issue had been resolved.
No, I appreciate that. I'm glad, and I expect, to be in writing to the township promptly. I don't know when is the best time to raise some other questions. It may not be now, and maybe Mr. Blue would want to continue, and I can raise them a little later in the presentation.
And I'm going to hold off. We have 2 more commissioners that want to.
I do have a number of.
Okay, so we will before we get to the voting. Okay, Commissioner Churko. Jeff, you're muted.
My main point was really going to follow Ann's comment. I'm glad to hear it's resolved, and I think even beyond this, I find it incredulous that a developer would come before and even complain about something as important as making things making these small adjustments. I sure hope that this board can send a message out to all future developers coming here as well, that we're not going to take these sorts of things lightly. We're going to be strict on ensuring that we have the proper safety precautions and traffic signals for future development. And it blows my mind that this sort of thing would even be an issue at any point. So I'm glad to hear it's resolved, and sure hope that this board and future boards remain vigilant in making sure that this sort of thing is not allowed to proceed with future developments.
Thank you, Commissioner Churko. Commissioner Norris.
Well said, Commissioner Cherica. And perhaps my next comment should be held until we vote, but I'm not sure. So I'll go ahead and you can stop me if it's not the right time. But I'm opposed to this project because 3 to 4 story buildings is out of character with the residential homes in the neighborhood. I'll be voting no because the zoning hearing board back in 2012 by a 2-to-1 vote should never have granted all the variances asked for. Specifically, this property only qualified for the age-restricted overlay district under a special exception. And one precondition to getting that exception was that the property must have a frontage on a state road equal to at least 450 feet. While both Ashbourne and Oak Lane Road are both state roads, neither one met the 450-foot requirement. The zoning hearing board incorrectly, in my opinion, accepted the applicants, including the frontage going out into the intersection. This is not frontage of the property. The Cheltenham Commissioners appealed the zoning hearing board decision in 2014 to the Common Pleas Court and again to the Commonwealth Court, both unsuccessfully. But I stand by my position in the township at the time in rejecting this development as proposed.
Thank you, Commissioner Norris. Mr. Blue, do you want to continue your testimony?
We can talk about the Roger Phillips letter if you'd like. I believe that it's a very all-encompassing letter. And
I think, to move things along, are there still points of contention or controversy that haven't been resolved? Because from Mr. Diazio, it sounds like the discussions have progressed. But let's make sure that if there are things that haven't been acceptably resolved, that we put those out in public before the board is going to be prepared to take a vote on the resolution to grant conditional approval.
I believe that the items on the letter are a will comply.
Okay. Any objection to that, Mr. Phillips? You're muted.
No, I have no
We good?
objection to that, Mitch.
Okay,
Yeah, we,
thank you.
Mr. Blue and I met last week and went through the entire letter, and he provided a letter of response the other day that states that all of the items would be will comply.
Okay. So, Mr. Friedman, you're hearing that directionally, the discussions have moved in a favorable direction, and we'll leave it at that. Commissioner Norris, was that a hand up, or that was a hand that was still there?
Yeah, no, that was a hand.
Okay, Commissioner Rappaport, go ahead.
Yeah, so getting back to some of the other questions I had. In the county's letter, I know it talked about additional structures. Where is the garbage going to be, I guess, hidden? Because I don't know that there were any structures or bins, and how is that going to be collected? And I guess with concern for the buffer to the neighbors.
It is, if I can respond to Commissioner Rappaport.
Go ahead, Mr. Blue.
And I have a couple more after this. Yeah.
Okay. It is our understanding that they will be internal to the buildings and put out on trash day.
So it'll be a public trash pickup for our refuse department?
I'll be honest with you, I don't have the answer for that. I mean, I can get the answer. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And it's my understanding from previous meetings that it'll be a private hauler that'll come in and
That's
take
what
it
I
out.
thought.
Yes, that's accurate.
And
The last resolution.
Yeah, we were
Yes.
told. Yeah.
And the trash will be kept internal to the buildings, and then when the hauler comes, they bring it out of the buildings in small dumpsters to the trash truck.
Okay, I'm assuming then that you know the game plan for that, and that won't be an egregious problem for the neighborhood.
Correct, as long as they
Okay.
follow through with what they
Okay.
intend.
My next question, you talk about maintaining forest walkways, right? My question is, how, what is the method that you're going to be using, and how are we assured that regular maintenance plan for cleaning those porous walkways will actually take place rather than creating runoff?
So part of our post-construction stormwater management plan, there's an operation and maintenance portion there. So that gets recorded.
Okay.
And you know, if there's anything that wants to be amended and part of the recordation, I can discuss that with Mr. Phillips and we can provide that.
Okay,
And-
but
and-
you actually did submit the O&M. Because I didn't see it. Okay.
And to add to that, and they will be signing an O&M agreement for the system to be maintained, and they have an annual reporting requirement under that,
Okay.
under the township's MS4.
Okay,
So if they-
that's okay, good. Thank you. That's reassuring. The only other thing I was going to say, and I realize you're no longer asking for a waiver on this, that it's already kind of a done deal, but I'll just raise my very strong objection to 6-inch caliper trees being replaced in part by only 2.5-inch caliper trees. I think that's very sad and detrimental to the township. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rappaport. Are there any other comments? I'm sorry, not Commissioner. Mr. Sekawango, do you have your hand up again?
Yes, I apologize. Thank you. Thank you,
That's
Mr.
okay.
Chairman.
I
just
was about
wanted
to make you a commissioner.
That would be a demotion for him.
A big pay cut, a big pay cut.
I just wanted to bring up the record plan does show a bus shelter within along Oak Lane Road. I just wanted to get some feedback from the developer. Again, if this bus shelter is constructed, it would be the township's preference that they maintain that bus shelter. But I don't know what the status of that is. Are they actually thinking of constructing it, and would they be willing to maintain it?
I can speak to that, Henry. We are opposed to putting the bus shelter. First of all, it's going to be within the road right of way. And, you know, as it's shown on our plan, and that was a carryover from, I guess, the preliminary plans, but we just don't think it's a good idea. We're not in the business of maintaining bus shelters. That would be, I guess, a SEPTA situation, if they even want a bus shelter there. We don't want to be involved in that.
Again, I just wanted it for the record, considering it was on the record plan. I just wanted to make sure it was part of this record.
I guess it's got to be removed. Is that correct? From the
Yeah, my understanding, Mitch, is that it's going to be removed because
Okay.
the township doesn't want the obligation to maintain it.
Okay.
So I have a question. When you say remove, so that will no longer be a bus stop, or you're just not going to have anything there?
No, just the bus shelter.
The shelter.
Correct.
Right. I mean, there's no shelter there now.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, no
Correct.
shelter now. Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments from members of the board?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Brocking.
Mr. Blue, this happens to be in my ward. I wanted to know, as we move forward with this and get closer, I would like to set up a town hall meeting with a representative of the developer, whether it's you or your attorney, to meet with the residents who live right behind it, where there's a cul-de-sac. They're very concerned about what's going to go on there. And I wanted to sort of I hope that you reach out to me or a representative. I want to do sort of an on-site town hall with the residents in that cul-de-sac right there. So please reach out to me so that can happen. That has to happen. And maybe we'll wait till September when everybody's done vacations. And again, I want it to be an on-site, not Zoom. I want us to go out there and talk and point and walk this area with the neighbors right there. That's all.
We would be very happy to meet with you, and I'll leave it up to Henry. I know you're really busy, but if you can get some dates and times, I'll try to make sure that we can accommodate you.
Hey, and Irv, please invite me or other commissioners who might.
You know, this is an open invitation.
Thank you.
Even those guys from Glenside can come over. I know those guys from Glenside.
Commissioner Brockington, I actually attended the planning commission meeting, and there were 2 residents there who were expressing some of those concerns. I think one of them lived on the cul-de-sac.
Yes, I was,
Yeah.
you and I both were in that meeting. And
Okay,
yes,
good. Okay.
she
good
was,
reminder.
and that's
Okay.
one of the ones that, but
Good.
it's not just her. We sort of want to just
Sure.
talk to all the neighbors there.
And we'll bring plans and we can walk people through the plans and tell them what's going on. We'll have a landscape plan and other things too.
I mean, because their concern is, one of their concerns is, where does your land start and their land ends? I mean, no one's done surveys, everything's been back there since 2012, as we say. So let's talk about that and meeting out there and getting that done. I don't want it to be on Zoom. It has to be out there.
Right. There's what's called monumentation along that common property line.
Mm-hmm.
So we can have that flag, as long as you're not telling me you want to meet tomorrow.
No.
We can have that flagged and we can put line stakes along there so people can see where the property line is.
All right. So Henry, I'll get in touch with you. We'll talk and we'll do pick up some dates in September. I'll talk to the residents about it and we'll go out and do that.
Thank you, Commissioner Brockington.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any additional hands raised, so I'm going to close discussion. I'm going to ask for a vote for the following thing: the resolution granting conditional approval and associated waivers, some of which may have been withdrawn, for the final land development application, CTDA number 2507, Kerlin Farms, 1050 Ashbourne Road. Again, proposing the construction of 79 age-restricted units in 3 four-story buildings with 153 parking spots and associated site improvements. I'll ask for just because there's some concern or opposition, I'll ask for individual commissioners to be polled on this. Township Manager Elliott, if you would.
Yes. Let's see. Commissioner Norris,
Nay.
Commissioner Ziegmanfeld,
Yay.
Commissioner Rappaport,
Aye.
Commissioner Brockington,
Yay.
Commissioner Cherico,
Yay.
Commissioner Lewis. You're muted.
Yay.
Okay, and Commissioner Arman is not present, so the motion carries 5-1.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Friedman. Thank you, Mr. Blue, and those developers who are investing in our township. Item 3B, concurrence of the 2025-26 Montgomery County Consortium Vehicle Fuel Contract awarded by Upper Merion Township Board of Supervisors on June 12th, 2025 to SJ Fuel South Company, Inc. of Barrington, New Jersey for the period of September 1, 2025 to August 31, 2026. There is an attachment. Are there any questions or comments or any concerns from either staff or members of the board on this? I see none, so I will move for approval of the contract that has been negotiated on our behalf as part of that consortium. All those in favor of item 3B, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? I see none, so that approves. We got item 3C. Consider recommending the Board of Commissioners authorize advertisement and adoption of an ordinance amending the Code of Cheltenham Township, Part 2, General Legislation to expand Chapter 162, single-use plastic bags, to include regulations on the distribution of single-use plastic utensils, single-use plastic straws, and expanded polystyrene products. There is an attachment. The reason why this ordinance is being amended is because by the efforts of the Environmental Advisory Committee and a great deal of diligence and a recognition of where our neighboring townships are throughout Montgomery County, this is, a simple but important action to tighten up some of the limitations of having things that really are difficult to eliminate from our trash and recycling. So are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Well, I see Commissioner Rappaport, that hand up. So we'll start with you.
Okay, thanks again. First of all, big thanks to the EAC for all their work in getting this through us. But I'm concerned, the wording is that it will go into effect 180 days after the September legislative meeting, assuming it is approved. And I don't know, is that statutory, or can't we reduce and have it go into effect much sooner than 180 days? That seemed excessive. What a delay.
Mr. Diazio?
So there's no legal requirement why it can't go into effect sooner. I'm in the process now of pulling up the draft because I thought that we eliminated that.
Okay, what I read,
There was
I think in the
language
pack-
in the plastic bag ordinance where there was a delay because the township needed some time to advertise publicly.
I think it still reads 180 days at toward the bottom. And I think we're almost behind. I mean, we're really among the last to do this. So I really think it can be reduced to even 30 days.
I see the 90. Are you seeing 90, Commissioner Rappaport?
I saw 180
Okay, I see
in the packet.
I'm looking at the effective date, section 8.
I'm not looking at it right now.
Okay, it says the ordinance shall become effective 90 days after its legal enactment. Maybe the manager has a comment here, but we can certainly talk about that as well.
If you go up onto page 4 of it, under the blue writing, it says 162-7, beginning 180 days after the effective date of this ordinance. Then it's reiterated in 162-8 and 162-9.
Thank you.
Manager Elliott?
Yeah, I was just going to point that out, that it was similar to the plastic bag ordinance, giving time for businesses to kind of accommodate that transition. Now, that being said, this is a bit different than plastic bags. So it could absolutely be reduced. I don't know, about 30 days, maybe 90 days or something like that. I know I'm just looking at
45 or 60. Now, before we advertise it, and the reason I'm making a stink out of it also is I know you can't change things like that after it's been advertised. So I don't want to go to advertisement with that.
This is the time to do that. And if the board wants to see a change, whatever change whatever consensus the group comes to now, we'll revise the document so that when you approve it in 2 weeks, you're approving whatever language you decide on today.
Well, because we're just saying on request, it really isn't something that requires businesses to do anything more than, inform their employees.
Well, when we advertise, we're at 30 days on the advertisement anyway. So if you go 30 and 60, why don't we adjust it to that? Instead of 180 or 90 days, do it 60 days, and there's adequate time to inform the businesses and also to use our communication channels to educate our public.
What has to happen, to properly notify businesses?
Well, I think you want to give the businesses some time to perhaps use the inventory that they have, or that, if they just made purchases. But 180 days certainly sounds excessive.
Yeah, but I think Jeff is saying, like, when does the clock start ticking? Is that what you're asking, Jeff?
Well, I'm just asking, like, what goes into having to properly notify? I mean, does the onus on the township to send out necessary alerts to people? Or I don't think so, right? Like, this is just an ordinance that we have to advertise. We then vote on it, becomes law. I think we put it in our public social media challenge,
correct,
and our website. We don't have to necessarily go out and reach and knock on every door and tell people that this is coming, or do we? We have to send out?
You don't.
Days is enough.
Yeah, I think we did some notification for the plastic bag ordinance. So if there is some type of enforcement, I would recommend that we reach out to the businesses that would be using these types of products so that they have an official letter from the township to put them on notice. So that could be, by the time the ordinance is passed and a letter goes out, it might take a bit of time. So, so if you say, 90 days or 60 days from the date of the letter that they have to make that change, I think that's appropriate.
So the EAC, Jeffrey Plout is just saying that the EAC went out and visited all the businesses, and they would be willing to do the same thing. So yeah, I mean, I think 60 days seems like, or 90 days seems more reasonable to me.
60.
We have 30 days in the
We
time
already-
to be advertised. So I think an additional 60 days seems adequate. So can we adjust that to 60 days after it's been, reviewed and authorized by the board?
Yeah, so that will require two changes in the document. So we should change the language in section 8 to say that the ordinance becomes effective immediately upon approval by the board. And then further up in the document, those specific provisions around utensils and styrofoam would be, you could put the grace period in there. But I do think it makes sense that the ordinance should become effective upon the board vote, even if you're going to delay enforcement, so to speak, on certain provisions. So we'll change the effective date of the ordinance itself to effective immediately, but then further up in the document, to the two places where Commissioner Chirico pointed out that there's a 180-day reference. Are we hearing 60 days? Is that the consensus of the group?
Seems reasonable. Any objection to that?
I support that. I support that.
Commissioner Brockington?
Yes, our solicitor just said a word that kind of triggered me: enforcement. Who is our plastic fork police officer? Who's enforcing this? And what happens to the business who's not compliant?
That would be our code enforcement official, Mr. Lynch.
There you go.
Oh, Mr. Nice Guy.
So when we, Mr. Plout, I believe, was on, Jeff and I had a conversation when we started this plastic bag ban. As we are inspecting the existing buildings and these buildings that use the bags, they were being notified. Now, as we inspect them this year, if they're not in compliance, then, we will take the proper course of action as, they violated an ordinance. So we'll go from there.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments on this from members of the board? So with those suggested revisions, let us authorize advertisement and adoption of the ordinance amending the code of Cheltenham Township, Part 2, general legislation to expand Chapter 161, 2, single-use plastic bags to include regulations on the distribution of single-use plastic utensils, single-use plastic straws, and expanded polystyrene products, with obviously the adjustments or the revisions recommended by our solicitor. I will ask for a vote on this. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Okay, it carries unanimously. Thank you, and thank you, EAC, for your diligence and your support of this. Item D, consider recommending the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution approving the sewer facilities planning module, SFPM, for a property located at 1900 Ashbourne Road, Elkins Park, for a proposed mixed-use development that will contain 99 dwelling units and 16,905 square feet of commercial office space. The proposed improvements will generate a proposed flow of 18,112.5 gallons per day, which is equivalent to 69 EDUs. There is an attachment, and I wonder if somebody would take a moment just to talk a little bit about the Ashland development and how it started and then how it evolved into the 3 buildings, et cetera. It would be helpful, just because I think a lot of the residents are just seeing or hearing about this probably for the first time. If anybody wants to take that, whether Roger, Henry, whoever feels do so in a brief fashion, I think it would be helpful.
Mr. Blue is online if you want to.
Mr. Blue,
go ahead.
okay.
Yes, I'm the township engineer. This is a project that's been under consideration for probably a little less of a year. Am I coming through?
Yeah, you
Yes.
are, but it's probably about
Okay.
3.5 years that that the discussion started.
Okay. And we're now to the point where we're in for a review of final plans. The sanitary sewer has been set aside because we're part of that corrective plan that DEP has passed on the Ashland project. It's 3 buildings. We've respected the environmental restrictions that we have within there. We have stormwater management. It's a company that also operated Linwood Gardens to the adjacent to us. We've got an abundance of landscaping along there. We have an abundance of PennDOT requested approvals. So I think it's going to be a real, I'm a little biased, but I think seeing what we've been involved in for, the last year in design, that I think it's going to be one, that the township will be very proud of. It's not age targeted or age restricted. We had submitted some renderings on the site, so that the township could see them during the process. It's going to be a very smart looking project. We're going to be, doing the PennDOT improvements, etc. So that's the 25 words or less.
Thank you. Commissioner Rappaport, once again, you're the lead.
Thanks very much. So maybe one of the engineers or all of the engineers can explain what I think is kind of an inconsistency. Here we have 99 units plus mixed use, and they're coming in for 69 EDUs. Whereas we just saw a project that had 79 units, no mixed use, and they're getting 79 EDUs. So I don't know, that doesn't sound consistent to me. What's going on in those calculations?
This was a study based on the applicant with other similar facilities in other places, and they've had numerous discussions with the PADP and have come to the agreement that this is the number that they landed on. If you look at the attachments that are included in the agenda tonight that go along with this resolution, it explains how that was all calculated.
Well, I saw the calculations, but it doesn't really answer the disparity.
Yeah, Commissioner, I can respond to that. The prior development, Kerlin Farms, is not actually getting 79 EDUs. That was the initial allocation, but based on all the studies they did, those allocations were reduced to about 59 or so, and that's how this development actually will be able to proceed based off of those unallocated EDUs.
Yeah, correct, and I don't believe that the correct me if I'm wrong, Henry, but I don't know if Kerlin Farms planning module has come before this board yet.
Yes, it has. It has.
It has. Okay, that I couldn't remember, but yeah.
So even though they said 79, that's not true.
Well, 79 was the units that they were discussing tonight,
Right,
the number of units, but that's not the number of EDUs assigned to that.
Fred Gerloff said 79.
That was a previous number from a previous
Okay.
allocation,
Yeah, that
on a
was-
connection management plan that has been since revised.
Correct.
Okay.
And
Right.
and the Ashland has one, studios at 1 and 2 bedrooms, so that also affects what's going on.
And just so you know, in the projected flow is 16,751 gallons. The allocated flow is about 11% more than that. It's 18,000 gallons. So there is some room in terms of the projections for a little bit of additional flow if that in fact is part of the determination after the building takes place.
No, I appreciate. I saw all those calculations. It was the misinformation from before.
Any other questions or comments from members of the board? I see none, so, and any other questions from staff? I also see none, so for this particular sewer facilities planning module for Ashland, which is 1900 Ashbourne Road, the proposed mixed-use development with the flows as we just stated, and I will move for recommending the adoption of that resolution. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay. Item D is over. Are there any additional items for Public Works for new business for tonight's meeting? I see no hands. I will close new business and I will move to number 4, Citizens Forum. Are there any Citizens Forum? I see that hand, that standard hand that's here. Darlene Melton, you have 3 minutes to catch us up on some of your concerns.
Hello, everyone. I know the 3-minute rule. Okay, you don't have to keep repeating it. I'm actually getting better. I have my questions and statements written down. Okay. Now,
We're ready.
my first question, since you brought up the 3-minute rule, and I was going to save this to last, I have a curious question. Why at some meetings, at the very beginning of the meeting, the citizens are allowed, if they're present for any agenda items, to make some comments if they choose. But this meeting, that wasn't afforded. And again, that's just it's a question, but you don't really have to answer it now. It's my comment.
No, we do.
You can answer it later in the email, so I can get my 3 minutes in, or I'm gonna have to write, and I don't feel like writing today. The other question that I had, since we were talking about water and Aqua was here, and they're talking about our sewer system, I had a question in regards to the water tower in Lamont. Is that considered a holding container? And number 2 with that, if it is, what is the status of Aqua looking into the condition of that water tower has the rust? Or are they still looking into it? Well,
Oh,
okay.
Mr. Gerlach isn't here, so
Okay,
I
well,
guess we have
again,
to
you
do
can
a
send me an
follow-up.
email.
Good
You can send me
question.
an email. The next question is on this revised for 1900 Ashbourne. Is not 1900 Ashbourne the beginning of where the wetlands start? Is that not the same property that years ago from the mega church? And I thought it had maybe another owner. Now I'm learning that it's called this project. Is it still going to be 3 buildings that with the residential and the commercial? Because my opinion about that is that it will take from the look of that area. It would actually hide Linwood Gardens, which is only 2 stories. So that's my statement there. And thank you, Commissioner Jericho, for your statement about developers coming in and trying to do what they want to do and not reflect our rules and regulations. I've been saying that for decades. So that's it. I think I did it in, what, 2 minutes?
You have to ask Allenson. We don't really time yet.
Oh, you know, you
I can answer your first question, though, Darlene. In the legislative session, we have the provision for people to be able to comment on the agenda items. That is not something that's in the committee meetings.
Okay, thank you, because it just seemed a little strange to me tonight. Okay, thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
I'll wait for the status of the water tower because the rust on that tower in the seams is visible with the naked eye, so it's kind of concerning. And oh, one other question. Commissioner Brockington, your statement that you read in the beginning before the meeting, will that be placed on the township website for everyone? I noticed that the calendar already shows the budget meeting dates. It doesn't, give the agenda or anything, but would your statement that you
Yeah,
has
we-
stated.
Yeah,
will
we
the-
can have it. Yeah, we can have it put on.
Okay, thank you.
And the budget meeting dates haven't changed.
Wait a minute now, September the 30th. Right? I was trying to write it down, and that's on the calendar. Is that the first one? September the 30th, October the 7th, and then October the 29th?
Yeah, they're on the calendar, right?
Sounds right.
That's what's on the calendar. After you said it, I checked. Okay, and you're saying they were changed. Okay, well,
No,
No.
those are not changed. That's what I'm
No,
saying.
they're not changed.
oh, they're
The
not
budget-
changed. Okay, okay. All righty, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Darlene, that's it. No more questions. Are there any additional people with citizens forum questions or comments? Can you see anybody, Allison? Or are we good to call for adjournment?
I do not see anyone else.
Okay, I'll move to adjourn Public Works. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.